Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day so far and welcome to today's video, which is going to be all about a millennial's greatest foe, our biggest enemy, Gen Z. I feel I have an unpopular opinion on Jay-Z and their mysterious ways, which I'd like to share with you today because I feel like any kind of different opinion and different way of looking at things and different perspectives should be shared because I think it helps us understand and grow, understand ourselves, understand others from other generations better. And I feel like I've got to the bottom of some of their ways. And I'm going to be sharing all of my thoughts on this with you today. So without further ado, let's get started. So the generations and our ways. I am brand new to the world of learning about generations. I didn't even know which generation I was in until maybe a year or so ago, when all I came across on TikTok were videos talking about millennials or boomers or okay boomer. That was a trend going around for a while, and boomers are typically known as the Karens of the community, of the world. That's typically a stereotype that we see a lot about baby boomers, that they are the Karens, those that complain about something, those that are very, very judgmental and old-fashioned, and also have lots of very old-fashioned ideas and ways that they'd love to stick to and love everybody else to stick to. So having learned that I was in fact a millennial, I think I'm really known as an elder millennial, which feels slightly offensive, but sure, I'll take it. Millennials are kind of known, I guess, as maybe like the cringe generation. Everything we do is cringy, everything we do is embarrassing, we're all a bit too try hard. Those are kind of the cliches around the millennial as a generation. Then you have Gen Z, and Gen Z are known as the generation of judgment. They are just constantly judging us all and telling us we're doing everything in our lives wrong. From a skinny jean to a side part of the hair to what we're wearing to wearing heels on a night out, etc., etc. They're always telling us we're doing everything wrong and it's mortifyingly embarrassing for all concerned. Now, I'm not particularly well acquainted with Gen Z because I don't really know any of them. My husband is Gen X, my parents are boomers, and my children are Generation Alpha. And let me tell you, it checks out. But what I see a lot on social media, particularly TikTok, is this sort of cliche and boxing in of the generations, that if you're in Gen Alpha, if you're in Gen Z, if you're a boomer, if you're a millennial, this is exactly who you are and how you are and the things that you do that annoy everybody else. And there's very little about what we can learn from other generations and what the other generations are getting right. And I feel like the biggest beef on TikTok, which is where I keep saying TikTok as opposed to social media because I feel like it's the only place I see this going on, but it's on such a huge normalized scale. But the biggest beef is millennials versus Gen Z. We're supposed to hate each other and see no good in each other's behaviors and ways and thoughts and opinions and ways of doing things. All I ever see is that's so millennial or millennial core, and that is always used as an insult. Even though I feel like if you are a millennial, of course you're behaving and acting like one because you are one. I don't know why that would be an insult, but it is very commonly, frequently used as an insult by Gen Z. And then millennials are very, very dismissive of Gen Z. They're seen as like the younger, bitchier siblings, or just someone that we can't understand. We have nothing in common. We look down on them. They're younger. What do they know? So I feel like that's kind of the common relationship and battles that we see between especially Gen Z and millennials. They seem like we just do not get along. We have nothing to say to each other, nothing we can learn from each other. And I feel like whenever Gen Z videos pop up and they're talking about the way they do things versus the way millennials or boomers look at things and do things, it's always in this like very sort of frowned upon way. Millennials and boomers in the comment section, Gen X's in the comment section. Very underrepresented generation, by the way, Gen X. I didn't even know that was an option because they just never seem to get any of the flack or any of the criticism or be talked about at all. It's always millennials, Gen Z and boomers that are part of the conversation. But we all look at each other with disdain for the ideas, for the ways that we do things, for the things that we do and say and how we dress. Everybody thinks that everybody else is wrong. But something I've noticed recently is that I have unpopular opinions when it comes to Gen Z and some of the things they do and some of their ideas and some of their ways of doing things and their preferences that are so different to ours generally. I appreciate them. I feel like there's a lot to learn from younger generations, older generations as well, of course. But I feel like there's a lot Gen Z are getting right. And as older generations, there's definitely some lessons we can take away, some things we can listen to, and some things that we can understand better as to where they're actually coming from and what they're actually trying to achieve. Because if we stop being so offended and defensive, which I guess Gen Z would say was very millennial of us, we can actually really learn a lot from them. So here are some of the lessons that I think we should take, or at least give a chance to, from Gen Z. First up, above all other generations, the thing that I think Gen Z have really got right is this real work to live mentality. No one in Gen Z is talking about living to work, putting in, 60 to 80 hour weeks at the office and being really proud of that fact. I think where we misunderstand them is Gen Z make a lot of videos about, trying to become an influencer or using online marketing or all of these jobs that are so available to us now because of the internet and because of social media, which, by the way, they had to grow up with their entire life on it. We luckily got away with that. Can you imagine? I sometimes look back and think, thank goodness social media was not a thing when I was at school. When I was 16, 17, 18, I didn't have to worry about any of that. I didn't go out on a Friday night and think that the next morning I was going to be living in fear of a photo that someone might have put on social media of me. That wasn't a possibility. Okay, we grew up safe and secure in the happiness, knowing that there was no social media to exist and ruin our lives, or without getting us in very serious hot water with our parents. But there's a lot of Gen Z still living at home with parents and using that advantage to travel, to see the world, choosing not to work or to work online, pick up one of the many online or work from home jobs and just doing the bare minimum so that they can live. Instead of spending decades of their life in education, getting in greater and greater debt, because let's face it, the university fees have gone up insane amounts from when I was at university to now. It's insane. And a lot of Gen Z are saying, no, thank you. I don't want to leave school with 6 figures, some people, of debt because of a degree, and then have wasted all of my life. Maybe it's not something I even want to do that much. Maybe it's not something that even affords me the life that I want. And instead, a huge percentage of Gen Z are saying, no, we don't live for our jobs or our careers, and actually it's a valid choice not to do so. Instead, they're seeking out careers that they can do from home, that they can do while traveling, that is perhaps passive income, and that's what they're looking for. They're working smarter, not harder. And I feel like there's a huge backlash when any Gen Zers or anyone who is choosing a career like content creation, like influencing, like online marketing or online sales, things like that. When anyone is choosing that job to do because it affords them a lifestyle, it allows them to travel, it allows them to be flexible in where they are in the world, whether they're traveling or where they want to live, so that they can have an amazing work-life balance. And I feel like a lot of the time this is met from utter scorn and disdain from the older generations. Millennials, but especially boomers, really frown upon this. And I think that's so interesting. You'll see whenever a younger generation is talking about their job or their career, and it's not something that involves slogging yourself to death for 50 years to live just making ends meet, it's really met with this utter disdain of get a real job, get a proper job. Older generations seem to have this built-in belief that you should be killing yourself day in, day out, working 10-hour days to barely make ends meet, or it's not a proper job. But the reality is, anything that you do for an income is a proper job. It doesn't have to be miserable. It doesn't have to mean breaking yourself. You don't have to be in a living hell to call that a job. If you're going and doing it and it's making you money, that's a job. That's the literal definition. It doesn't have to be miserable, and actually, nor should it. And I feel like Gen Z are the first generation to really reject that idea that you have to go and work at something you hate, that makes you miserable, that makes your entire life a living hell in order to call something a job or in order to make money from it. They're the first generation, and I think it probably comes from maybe some COVID stuff where everybody was working from home, where a lot of people were made redundant, where a lot of people lost their jobs, and they actually started thinking, actually, I like being at home. I like having this flexibility. I like living back with my parents and not having that pressure or that stress of having to keep this horrible job that they hate and are miserable in and has our stress levels through the roof in order to live my life. And they're choosing, a lot of them, not all of course, but a lot of them are choosing a different path. And I think that's they're right. I think that is the right way. If you love your career that is really stressful and it's really fast paced and it's really competitive, but you love it, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And of course, we need surgeons and doctors and police people. We need all of the emergency services, very stressful, high-paced jobs. Of course, we need people doing all of those jobs, but it's not the only option. There are options that are easy, that require very little brain power, that require very little effort. There are very easygoing, stress-free jobs out there. And I feel like Gen Z wants that type of life, and they want to just get by with enough money to fund what they want to do, eating out, lots of dating, much more than we ever did, and lots of traveling. And I feel like that's actually something we can learn from and really think to ourselves, is this the right path for me? Is this hell that I'm living in, for what reward, worth it? Could I be doing something much easier and reaping this exact same benefits or even more benefits than I'm getting now? And I feel like that's the questions that Gen Z are really asking themselves. Is it worth it? And it's much more common to see younger generations being proud of the fact that they either don't work or they minimally work, but they're able to live freely and really enjoy their lives, and particularly their young lives. And I'm really envious of that. I've now found myself a job that I can do from home very, very flexibly, but that wasn't my reality for the first part of my life when I was 20 and 30. That was something that I found later on in life, and I feel like I wish that I had started this sooner, because I have no one to answer to, no colleagues, which I do miss very frequently, but not all of the colleagues are created equally. No boss, no one to be responsible to. If I don't want to work today, I don't. And I think that's something that a lot of us are jealous of, and that's perhaps why it's met with such a bitter response, particularly from the older generation. Maybe those who have retired, but they worked their whole lives and they grafted, and it was misery and it was physical and it was exhausting and it was hard. And it appears like some people who have done that and that's been their working life experience wants everybody to suffer as much as they did. And actually these days, it doesn't have to be like that. You can have a much lower stress load. You can work a lot fewer hours for the same reward in a much more flexible variety of jobs that are available to us now, just because the internet is so much more widespread and work from home jobs, work remote jobs are much more frequent. And who cares if the boomers don't think it's a proper job? Proper job does not equal hell every day of your life. Something else that Gen Z are really calling us out on and have a totally different way of going about things and looking at it, and we are very offended by it and get very defensive, is the way they dress. Here's the thing, we get very offended when Gen Z will say like they're not doing skinny jeans are out, and we'll have 6 pairs of skinny jeans and we live in them, and we're very offended. But let's start off by considering when we were in our 20s, late teens, 20s, were we trying to wear the same clothes as our parents? Not many of us were. And I know there's always those of us who had very stylish mothers, and we might have thought, my mum is so stylish, she always looks amazing, and when I'm older, that's what I want. She's my idol, she's my hero, I think she's so trendy. But did we want to wear the same clothes as her? That's a different question. You see the difference? Why would we be offended by a whole generation below us not wanting to wear the same clothes as us? That's very normal, and we were the exact same way. We just didn't have social media to tell our mums our thoughts and feelings about their clothes. So I think it's very normal and natural that Gen Z don't want to wear the exact same clothes as us. And that doesn't mean they don't think she looks nice. I think she looks lovely. That older lady she's rocking her outfit. That's what I want to wear, and that's what I want to look like when I'm 20 years older. But they don't want to wear the same clothes as us. What I have noticed is a pattern in the things that Gen Z reject. Things like skinny jeans, things like wearing high heels on a night out dancing, the type of jeans, the type of trainers even, they're favouring much softer, lower profile trainers than we have done. I feel like the secret to what's actually going on here is that Gen Z are prioritising comfort over everything else, whereas I feel like it's a very millennial thing, that sort of beauty is pain attitude, and comfort didn't come into our decisions. We all knew our feet were going to be shredded to pieces and we were going to have to walk home carrying our heels and going barefoot down the road because our heels were going to cause us so much pain, but we wore them anyway. Whereas I feel Gen Z are really prioritizing self-care, self-love, comfort and happiness over grafting and working and slogging and beauty being pain. They are actually saying, no, I want to go and dance and not care and let my hair down and go wild without my feet bleeding come the end of the night. Same thing goes for high-waisted jeans. Gen Z said, no, we're going to wear baggy jeans that are comfortable, that feel like joggers, because we don't want everything to be being pinched in and sucked and restrictive. The thing that they're doing right, that we should sort of listen to rather than just being offended because they don't want to wear the same clothes as us, is why and where their decisions and their preferences are coming from, because it's comfort. It's comfort instead of what makes us the smallest, what squeezes us the most, what's the tightest, what makes our legs look the longest. Because again, millennials, I feel like we really had it rough. We lived and we grew up in the America's Next Top Model era, where everybody on there was told how ugly and overweight they were and how short their legs were and how stubby and how they could see a double chin in a certain angle. That's the generation we grew up with, all of that. You're never thin enough, you're never pretty enough, you're never at the right angle, you're never beautiful enough, your legs are never long enough. We grew up in that era. So a lot of what we do when it comes to clothing choices is about making ourselves feel or look smaller and hiding things, whereas Gen Z are driven by what is the most comfy, what do I feel happiest in, what can I dance the night away in and be free and comfortable and happy. And that's the bit that I think we should take away, rather than saying they're so rude, they aren't cancelling my skinny jeans. Actually listen to where it's coming from. It's coming from a place of comfort and carefreeness, okay? They don't care as much as we did what other people think. They just care what is comfortable and what they're happiest in and what they can be in comfortably for an entire day without feeling like you have to undo a button at lunchtime, you know? That's the bit that we could learn from. Something else that I've noticed is much more talked about on social media, particularly on TikTok these days, is being child-free and proud and happy, and that being a choice, or choosing that they will be child-free in the future for themselves if they haven't got to that stage in their life yet. And that is something that is met with an utter wall of denial from the older generations. I see a lot of posts from Gen Zers saying that they are choosing, or they know that they are going to be, that the right choice for them is that they are going to be child-free. They don't want children, it's not for them, that's not the life that they are choosing. And it is almost always met, particularly from older generational women, with refusal to accept that that is the wrong choice, you're wrong for doing that, and you are going to regret it, or you will change your mind. That is something that lots of women tell younger generations who say that they don't want children. It's not the right decision for them. Here's the thing, it's not the right decision or the right choice for everybody. It isn't. How many people do we see talking about how they regret having children? If they could go back, they would make a different choice. I will say I am someone who was kind of on the fence. I never said I'm going to be child free, I want to be child free. But I did feel like in my 20s, I didn't feel broody. I didn't feel like I was, desperately trying to hold everyone's babies. That was never me. And then I feel like I suddenly hit my sort of late 20s and I definitely knew I wanted to have children. And I'm someone who has never regretted having children. I'm obsessed with my children. They are the best thing about me. They are the best thing I've ever done, and I live for them. They don't make my life miserable, they only add to it. And are some days hard? Do some days they make me cry? Yes, sure, but I have never once regretted them, and that has absolutely been the right choice for me. So couldn't it be true that it would be the opposite for somebody else, and that they could have that same happiness and joy and know and never regret and never wonder or never think that they wish they had done something different? People are different. And I feel like that's something that a lot of older generational women like to force on Gen Z people that don't want children because it was not their choice, and they feel like because maybe at one point they didn't want children and then they did, that's what's going to happen to everybody else. But I feel like, again, Gen Z have grown up on social media. They've seen a huge amount of the previous generation women particularly talking about how miserable they are because of children or how much they regret having children, and they've said, I don't want that to be me. I don't want that life. I like the freedom, I like this, I like the money and all the extra things that you can do without having children as your choice. And I feel like this is something really sad because it's coming from what happened to us. We're now putting that same pressure on the generation behind us, which I hate for us to do. Boomers and millennials, as a woman, you from, the day you started to grow up, immediately it's like, have you got a boyfriend? When are you getting your next boyfriend? When you get a serious boyfriend? When are you getting engaged? When is the wedding? Then the second you're married, all you get is questions about when are the babies coming, when are the babies. It's all these assumptions about the direction a woman's life should go and the things that you must do if you're a woman. When we were growing up, that's all we hear, and certainly for the generations above us, Gen X and Boomers, it would have been even worse. And not everyone can have children, and not everyone should have children. There are so many people who it's just not the right choice for. There are so many people who are parents who are not good parents, who are toxic, who are bullies, who are narcissistic parents, who are abusive parents. And by pressuring and forcing everybody, you'll change your mind, you'll regret it, it'll be your life's biggest regret if you don't have children. People are pressured into having children who don't want them and continue to live their life knowing that these little people ruined their lives, and they treat their children in the way that they feel about having had their lives ruined by your existence. And that is the last thing that any child wants, or that any child should be exposed to, or any child should be brought up feeling like they weren't wanted, or that they're a nuisance, or that they're the bane of their parents' lives. It's a valid choice to say, I wouldn't be a good parent, it's not for me, it's not something I want, that's not the life I want to lead. And we need to stop pressuring and pushing and telling Gen Zers that they're wrong for saying that and being honest about that, because the alternative is having children that they didn't want, and then those children growing up feeling and seeing that feeling every day of their lives. When someone says they don't want children, let's start hearing them and believing them and respecting that as a valid life choice that might be different to our own, but is a valid choice, and let's start respecting it. The last thing that I feel like Gen Z have so much to teach the older generations, particularly us millennials, is boundaries, setting boundaries. This has been revolutionary for me. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, I worked in catering, so I worked in restaurants, I worked in bars, I worked in retail, all those sort of jobs that, you get started at. And then I went into personal assisting. I worked as a personal assistant, executive assistant, and I worked my way up doing jobs like that. So I've kind of worked in pretty much every industry in my time. And something that was so revolutionary to me is the setting of boundaries in your job to your boss. Unreasonable expectations. Starting a job, applying for a job, and being recruited, and then suddenly, you know, a few months down the line when they realize that you're good at it and you work hard, being suddenly loaded and loaded and loaded with new work, but no extra payment, no extra responsibility on your job title, no promotion, just a whole load of new responsibility that was not part of the job description. That's something that is so commonplace to us. That happens to everybody. Another thing that I've seen Gen Z fully rejecting is shift workers being called in on their day off. Every week without fail. When I worked in bars and restaurants, that happened to me every single day off that I was rotated. I got a phone call from my work, and it was so stressful, and I didn't dare not answer, and I didn't dare not say, no, it's my day off, I'm not coming in, because you would be guilt tripped, you'd be told off, you would be treated like you were, you know, a terrible person who's let everybody down if you didn't go in unexpectedly, suddenly in the middle of the day on your day off. And I see again, Gen Z are saying no to that. I know, can you believe it? They're saying, no, I won't answer my phone on my days off. Those are my days off. I'm having them. Please don't ask me to work. And actually, there's a lot of laws to protect workers against things like this. You're not allowed to ask someone to work 7 days a week without a day off. You're not allowed to contact people when they're on maternity leave. You're not allowed to ask people constantly to come in on days off or to work overtime, etc., beyond what is allowed. There are a lot of laws, and Gen Z have made themselves aware of them. I feel like as millennials and older generations, that was never an answer we were taught to say. We were told the answer is always yes. You work yourself to the bone. If your boss asks for something, you do it. It was always on our job description, and any other responsibilities that may arise or any other work that we may ask you to do. That was like a line that's always on every job description that basically is a get out of jail free card that we can pile as much work as we can find on this person without having to pay them any more or give them a promotion or change their job title. Gen Z read their contracts. They say no, they set boundaries, they take their days off and they won't pick up the phone and they won't have a conversation, and they'll say, no, I'm not doing it. And again, we lived in utter terror of a reference. Who here in the group, it's a safe space, remember, as always, has lived in terror of not wanting to work their full notice, regardless of the reasons why you're leaving and why that is unreasonable? You would always work your full notice with a smile on your face, however that might look, because we felt like we needed that reference, even if that job was like any old job. We would kill ourselves, get through our notice periods just in case we got a bad reference. These days, you're not really allowed to give a proper reference. In the jobs I've worked when I've been asked for a reference, you are only really allowed to confirm employment dates and maybe like something like salary. You're basically confirming that that person did in fact work here, that was their job title, and these are the dates they started and finished. You're not like writing a hate letter. Like, that's just not the case. References do not make or break your future employment. And again, things like notice periods. I thought that you would go to prison if you did not work your full notice period, but they actually can't legally force you into work every day. And if you say, here's my notice, this is the reason I won't be coming in, I'm going to serve the rest of the week and then I'm leaving, but they say, no, but your notice period is 2 months long, there would have been no further questions asked. We would have worked whatever our notice period is. Again, Gen Z are saying, no, that's unreasonable, I'm leaving for these reasons and this is the notice I'm giving you, and understanding there's nothing an employer can do about it if you are saying you aren't going to work that notice period. And they're not just doing it at work and with colleagues and with bosses, they're doing it with family. Something I've come across a lot on social media, which has made me really value my family, that this was never a consideration, is boundaries when someone has had a child. This was something that I'm so lucky, and I realise now how lucky I am, that my family on both sides, my family and my husband's family, no one on either side of our families was ever pressuring us or pressuring to come and see the baby or hold the baby or anything that made us feel uncomfortable at all. But that is not so many people's reality. You know, there are so many mother-in-laws who are like demanding to be in a hospital room when someone is giving birth, and that's such a personal preference and a personal thing as to who you want in that room. And then when you want people to meet the baby, when you feel ready to see people, when you feel ready to introduce your baby, when you're feeling in a place where you can have, you know, company and people in your home, that's again completely personal to every person. It very much depends on your mental health, on your physical health, the kind of birth and recovery that you are having as to when that might be. And Gen Z are so much better at setting boundaries and protecting their peace and protecting themselves and their children and their loved ones from someone who is a toxic influence. Gen Z talk quite openly a lot on social media about cutting off family members or family members they have real strict boundaries with because of those family members' behaviors. Whereas again, millennials, Gen X, boomers, we are of the stiff upper lip. You just have to take it, grin and bear it, suffer in silence mentality. It was never an option to set boundaries with our parents or our in-laws. That is just not something that you do, regardless of how negative and toxic and damaging those relationships could be, particularly when coming from family. You had to just suck it up and take it and grin and bear it till they left, and you could all breathe a lovely sigh of relief. Whereas Gen Z are very much quicker and stricter and better at cutting off any negative influence, whether that may even be a parent, an in-law, a relative, someone who is really negatively impacting their lives and is very, very toxic. Gen Z are much quicker and more willing to say, no, these are the boundaries that I'm going to put up because of the way that you're behaving and influencing us. And these are the ways that you can continue to have a relationship with us. Otherwise, if you can't do that, you won't. And that, I did not know that was an option, okay? Luckily for me, it's not an option I have to use. My family are incredible, as are my husband's family. But I'm super duper proud of Gen Z for doing that, because I feel like that's something that is hard. It's tough. And they're essentially sticking up for themselves against bullies. That's not something I feel like millennials are very good at. You know, doing this job, I encounter a huge number of bullies because they're everywhere online, and my millennial heart tells me I just have to put up with it. It's part of the job. And that's something I'm told by older generations a lot. It's part of the job. You knew what you were getting into. You knew what you signed up for. That's part of it. You're online. You put yourself online, and therefore you deserve everything that's said to you or that you get, and you should expect it, and you should just suck it up. Tough upper lip. You need to get a thicker skin. Those are things that older generation or people say to me all the time about bullies on the internet and trolls. You don't see that from younger generations. Younger generations are refuting that, and they're saying, no, we're going to fight it. We're going to push back. We're going to block. We're going to tell people off. We're going to call people out. I see Gen Z creators responding to trolls and name and shaming them and posting their photos and where they live and things like that, and really calling it out. Whereas older generations are just saying, no, you have to take it. That's what we did, so you have to. And actually, I'm super proud of Gen Z. They are far better at sticking up for themselves, at setting boundaries, at setting out the kind of life they want to lead, and who cares what anyone else has to say about it. And those are the messages and the mindset that I really am going to try and learn from and take inspiration for in my own life, because I think it's something we should listen to and learn from, instead of defensively just rejecting everything they say because they're a little younger than us. So there you have it. Those are some things that I have learned and that I think are amazing, that I see from Gen Z, that I think some of us millennials, Gen Xers, certainly boomers, we can all learn from each other, whether we're younger or older, and we all are getting something right that maybe other generations could learn from and take inspiration from, because no one's opinion or feelings are invalid. We all have our own experiences, and the eyes of youth are not useless. We have this whole mentality that, age means experience, and therefore we have to respect our elders, and anyone younger than us is wrong about everything. And that just is so not the case. And I think we could all be a bit more open to understanding each other better and listening to each other's perspective on things. I will say I don't think I'll ever get rid of the side part, but the thing is, they don't care if I don't. They're just saying they don't want a side part, and that's allowed. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this slightly different type of video, a bit more of a chatty, topical kind of conversation as opposed to strictly about makeup. I'd love to know all of your thoughts on these topics. Please let me know if there's something that you've learned, a lesson that you've taken away from a different generation to your own. I'd love to hear it. I'd love for us to try and change our mindset from just being defensive about the way that our generation does things to actually listening to other generations and learning from them. I'd love if we're a bit more open to doing that. So please let me know anything you've learned from other generations in the comment section down below, and all of your thoughts on these topics I've discussed in this video with you today. But thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it interesting, and I would love to see you in the next one. Otherwise, take care for now. Bye 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 bye.